differing in speed, and never static mechanical. 5. Lumination. The visibility of argon energy in the darkroom is obviously due to the function of lumination. Argon energy emits or develops light, or, expressed differently, it functions in such a manner that our visual sense perceives light, it illuminates. This argonatic lumination, no matter under what conditions it may occur, is in most cases of a bluish-gray, bluish-green, or bluish-violet color. This distinguishes argon lumination from other types of lumination such as that of gases. Neon gas luminates red, argon white, helium green. Argonatic lumination in a vacuum is distinctly bluish-violet and it produces a blue reaction on color film. The lumination is strongest when there is an exciting contact between two argon energy fields or between an argon energy field and an electromagnetic field. Argonatic lumination is cold, no heat develops as, for instance, in the passage of electricity through thin wire or as in chemical combustion. Atmospheric conditions such as sheet lightning over wide areas of the sky, the wavy aurora borealis, and the bluish St. Elmo's fire, together with the soft glow of glowworms and the bluish lumination of wood that has disintegrated bionously, are examples of cold lumination functions of argon energy. Microscopically, argonatic lumination in living cells and in bionous matter can be observed in the strong refraction of light. Strongly charged earth bions or red blood cells show a strongly illuminating aura around a membrane. When these cells weaken and lose their argon charge, this aura, or energy field, disappears. 6. Heat production. Whereas argonatic lumination is cold, other functions of argon energy are accompanied by a more or less marked rise in temperature. The heat level of living organisms is usually higher than the temperature of the surrounding air, and the temperature of the Earth's atmosphere is constantly higher than the much lower temperature of surrounding space. At the argon accumulator, a constant temperature difference, T, is maintained between the air directly above the accumulator and the air surrounding it. These differences vary, on the average, from 0.3 degrees to L.5 degrees C in closed rooms. In the open air, they often reach high values such as 15 degrees to 20 degrees Celsius in the sun. This temperature difference is apparently due to heat developed by the reflection or stopping of the kinetic energy of the argon energy motion at the metal walls. Removal of the inner metal walls reduces the difference to 0 degrees or nearly 0 degrees. According to the current argon physical assumption, the continuous difference to T is a manifestation of a concentration of argon energy in the argonatic system, be it a living organism, the planet, or an argon accumulator. It demonstrates the argonomic potential from the lower to the higher level, and it contradicts the general, unrestricted validity of the second law of thermodynamics. There exists not only a process of dissipation of energy in the form of heat, but also the reverse process of the building up of energy. 7. Static electricity. Static electricity is a specific function of the atmospheric argon energy. Paradoxically, the theory of electricity assumes that the atmosphere is both free of electrical charges and full of static charges, static being of an electrical nature. Sheet lightning and thunderstorm lightning have remained unexplained. Argonomy demonstrates the charges in the atmosphere by means of the spontaneous electroscopic discharge, the so-called natural leak in classical physics. This discharge is more rapid in a less concentrated argonatic atmosphere and slower in a more highly concentrated one. It is, furthermore, slower at noon than in the early morning and evening. This fact contradicts the ionization theory, cf. The Discovery of the Argon, Volume 2, The Cancer Biopathy. 8. Concentration of argon energy. 2 to 3-fold concentration of argon energy in the atmosphere is indispensable for many argonomic procedures and experiments. Certain experiments do not succeed in the natural atmospheric concentration, such as, for instance, the charging in high vacuum. The necessary concentration is achieved by the presence of an argon room or several argon accumulators in the building where the experiments are carried out. The argon accumulator is capable of concentrating atmospheric argon energy by the arrangement of its layering. It consists of 2 or more, up to 20, layers, each constructed of non-metallic substance on the outside and sheet iron or steel wool on the inside. This arrangement influences the atmospheric argon energy in such a manner that its movement toward the closed space is greater than toward the outside. An argonomic potential is created from the lower level outside toward the higher level inside and is continuously maintained. The argonomic potential can be demonstrated by the slower discharge of electroscopes on the inside and by the constant temperature difference above the upper metal plate, 2T. Concentrated argon energy has many beneficial effects on living organisms, which I have tried to describe in my book The Cancer Biopathy. 9. The argonautic potency and sensitivity of the observer. Human organisms with low argonautic potency or severe armoring do not perceive argon energy phenomena easily, in contradistinction to healthy organisms. People suffering from a cancerous shrinking biopathy do not feel the argon in the accumulator until after several days or even weeks, i.e., until they have become sufficiently charged. Argonautic perception, too, is weakened in observers with low argonautic potency. Such experimenters will, for instance, not be able to produce lumination in a gas tube. Furthermore, they will have difficulties in discerning the light phenomena in the dark, and they will be unsure about the sensations of heat and prickling that the well-charged organism perceives so easily. The biophysical structure of the observer is, therefore, of the utmost importance in argonomic work. Severely armored individuals easily develop anxiety in the darkroom when they become aware of the lumination. On occasion they react with panic. They will try to interpret away the phenomena with empty words such as "it's only subjective," or "it's mere suggestion," or similar statements. The structure of the observer is of importance, since it is the organismic argon energy in his sense organs that reacts to the external argon phenomena. The inclusion of the structure of the observer in the judgment of natural phenomena is a very important, if not decisive, step forward toward the integration of the subjective and the objective, the psyche and the physical. It is chiefly the ignorance of the biophysical and depth psychological functioning of the observer that has led mechanistically oriented scientists into the dead-end street where theoretical physics finds itself today. These scientists, who otherwise have demonstrated such an excellent critical sense of inquiry, are still adhering to old, outmoded psychological thinking. They cling to a consciousness that somehow has no basis in the organism, no rooting in biophysical processes. They are unaware of the great progress that has been made during the first part of the century in connecting the functions of perception with the functions of the emotions, and in connecting the emotions with bioenergetic, i.e., truly physical, processes in the observing and reasoning organism. Natural scientific research is an activity that rests on the interaction between observer and nature, or, expressed differently, between argonautic functions inside and the same functions outside the observer. Thus, the character structure and the senses of perception in the observer are major, if not decisive, tools of natural research. We do not doubt for a moment that the physiological structure of a surgeon plays a decisive role in the operation he performs, or that the sense of balance and rapid movement in the flyer are decisive for the mastery of aviation. But, in natural research, this principle has been badly neglected and misinterpreted. I fear that it is the emotional and, within the emotional realm, especially the biosexual, functions that have kept the classical researcher from closing the gap between observing, biopsychic, and observed, biophysical, nature. In the realm of non-living nature, too, argonomic research finds its best orientation when it adheres to what it has learned in the realm of living nature about the intensity of organ sensations, about the function of the orgastic convulsion, about the endoptic phenomena, about biophysical field reactions beyond the skin surface of the organism. The unimpeded argonautic functioning in the observer and the experimenter is, therefore, a requirement of the very first importance in argonomic natural research. It is regrettable that the thinker in classical physics does not find his way toward the understanding of the bioenergetic functioning in the observer, and that he is inextricably bound up with the view of a phenomenological psychology of some 50 years ago, in which consciousness and reason are still floating freely, unrooted, unconnected, and uncomprehended in empty space. I wish to summarize the functions that have been attributed to the ether by many researchers who tried to describe the general substratum of all known physical phenomena. It is amazing to find that most of these functions, which have never been observed directly, coincide with many functions of the cosmic argon energy, which have been observed directly and reproduced experimentally. The biopsychiatric problem that amazes us is this: observers of nature have described the cosmic primal energy correctly as far as its main functions are concerned. Still, they have been unable to make contact with these functions except by deduction. Direct observation and experimentation with the ether were closed to them. It is obvious that this fact is not to be attributed to the ether but to the observer. Therefore, the problem is a biopsychiatric one. It is mainly concerned with the biophysics of perception, the interpretation of sense impressions and organ sensations. As the whole development of argonomy has so clearly demonstrated, there was only one access to the physical study of the ether, the argonautic current in man, or, expressed differently, the flow of the ether in man's membranous structure. For many ages, religion has called this primal force God. We begin to understand now why most of the great physicists who dealt with cosmic problems, especially those of the ether, such as Newton, were occupied so intensely with the problem of God. Summary of functions as required for the ether as observed in cosmic argon energy. 1. Exists universally. Exists universally, argon accumulators operate everywhere. 2. Fills all space. Fills all space, argon energy can be demonstrated in a vacuum. 3. Penetrates all matter. Penetrates all matter. 4. Is the source of all energy. Varies and manifests itself as heat, static electricity, thunder and sheet lightning, electricity, magnetism, gravitational attraction. 5. Changes into matter or mass. Superimposition of two or more argon energy waves, Chrysler-Well, results in a mass particle. 6. Is responsible for the cohesion of Keep's unit of matter, ions, together. Cohesive force become free and atoms. Demonstrable when solid matter disintegrates into ions equals argon atoms. Demonstrable when solid matter disintegrates into ions equals argon energy vesicles. 7. Transmits light. Transmits argonautic excitation with the speed of light. Light is a manifestation of argonautic lumination and is of local character. 8. Is transparent. Is transparent, can become visible as refraction of light, as heat waves and bad seeing. 9. No heat in ether. Most argonautic functions are cold: lumination, movement through wire, attraction. However, reflection by metal creates heat, as does highly mobile concentration within matter, planet, organism. 10. No loss of energy. No loss of energy, however, there is an energy metabolism: a. Flow toward higher level, b. Maintenance of higher level, capacity, c. Discharge toward lower level. 11. Is resting, stationary, Earth is always in wavy and pulsatory motion. The argon envelope moves through ether like a rotating more rapidly in the galactic argon ocean than the Earth's globe, ball on stagnant water. Analogy is that of a ball rolling on water waves more slowly than the waves. 12. Cannot be demonstrated. Misinterpretation of Michelson experiment was due to assumption that the ether was stationary and that light traveled through space. Is clearly demonstrable everywhere visually, thermically, electroscopically, with Geiger counters, accounts for phenomena in nature hitherto unexplained: natural leak, bad seeing, field action in empty space, static, cosmic rays, blueness of sky, ocean, distant mountains, ionized cosmic dust in aurora borealis, etc. Cosmic superimposition. O man, take heed. What saith deep midnight's voice indeed? I slept my sleep, from deepest dream I've woke, and plead the world is deep, and deeper than the day could read. Deep is its woe, joy deeper still than grief can be. Woe saith, hence, go. But joys all want eternity, want deep, profound eternity. Nietzsche Chapter I Stage and Meadow. The basic interest in the subject of this publication is human and not primarily astrophysical. In what manner is man rooted in nature? Is the question around which the theme revolves. It is doubtless the Argon energy function in man's reasoning that touches on reality. The character structure of man, the frozen history of the past 4,000 to 6,000 years of human society, will determine man's fate and conditions in the near future. Looking forward through a dense fog, which has obscured man's view for several decades now, the author has tried to draw the ultimate consequences from what he has learned about human functioning over a period of more than 30 years of intimate knowledge of the characterological backstage of the public scene. Very little of the actual drama of present-day social struggles will appear in these pages, however. The author did not intend to study the impact of the backstage events upon the performance on the public stage. On the contrary, he has opened the door that leads from the backstage of the theater to the spacious fields and meadows surrounding the theater of present-day human affairs. Observed from these meadows, under glittering stars in endless heavens, the show on the stage appears strange. Somehow, the endless heavens on silent nights do not seem in any sort of accord with the show inside the theater or with the subject of the performance. All that belongs to the show seems far off, unreal, and very much out of place if seen from outside the theater building. Why does man present gay or tragic or pornographic love stories on the stage, with people crowding into the auditorium to laugh or cry or to shudder with lust, while deep in the woods that surround the meadows, policemen are busy disturbing lovers in silent, quivering embrace? It does not seem to make good sense. This is only one small, insignificant example of the great discrepancy and the varied nonsensicalities in man's existence. We shall not delve into any of these social, psychological, biological, or political issues, which have been thoroughly elaborated by the author in previous writings. The social problem does not seem to yield to any kind of inquiry within the sphere of man's thought and actions during the past few thousand years. Let us therefore try to look at it from outside. The impetus to the present study came from some disturbing experiences in the Argonomic Infant Research Center, which was founded by the author for the purpose of studying nature in the newborn infant. Argonomic research had broken down completely the boundaries between the bioenergetic and astrophysical realms, heretofore kept strictly delineated by mechanistic natural science and transgressed only in mystical experiences, in a factually useless way. The newborn infant appears as an energy system that brings some definite cosmic laws of functioning into man's realm of operation, i.e., to remain with our analogy, with the infant, definite cosmic functions pass through the door that leads from the meadow and the open fields into the theater building and onto the stage of human drama. In this respect, the newborn infant is comparable to the experience one often has when working with argonautic pulses on the Geiger counter or on the oscillograph. One can easily switch over from pulses in the living organism to the same type of pulses in the atmosphere. One operates in a practical manner with the common functioning principle, the CFP, of man and cosmos. There is no longer any barrier between a human organism and its cosmic environment, which, of necessity, is and always has been its origin. One forgets the show on the stage and concentrates on this amazingly practicable identity of living and non-living functions. On the human stage, it is forbidden by law under punishment of fine or imprisonment or both to show or even discuss the embrace between two children of the opposite sex at the age of 3 or 5. Somewhere in the audience sits a human being, broken in his emotional security, full of perverse longings and hatred against what he has lost or never known, who is ready to run to the district attorney with the accusation that children are being misused sexually and that public morals are being undermined. Outside on the meadow, however, the genital embrace of two children is a source of beauty and wonder. What drives two organisms together with such force? No procreation is involved as yet, and no regard for the family. Somehow this drive to unite with another organism comes with the newborn when it passes from the meadow onto the stage. There it is immediately squelched and smolders under cover, developing smoke and fog. Inside, on the stage, the embrace between two children or two adolescents or two grown-ups would appear dirty, something totally unbearable to look upon. Outside, under the glimmering stars, no such reaction to the sight of the embrace of two organisms would ever occur in sane minds. We do not shudder at the sight of two toads or fish or animals of other kinds in embrace. We may be awed by it, shaken emotionally, but we do not have any dirty or moralistic sentiments. This is how nature works, and somehow the embrace fits the scene of silent nights and broad meadows with infinity above. The intellectual cynic and the smutty barroom hero, of course, belong on the stage and not in the meadow, where they would certainly disturb the harmony and not fit into the picture. But we would refuse to believe that a meditating Indian sage would object to the sight or not fit in. Somehow, the deeply searching human mind has never failed to find itself in the meadows of nature, outside the theater of human stage shows, be it on high mountains or beside blue lakes. Somehow, the harmony in natural functioning belonged to the sage. It does not matter here whether or not human meditation has ever succeeded in lifting the veil. It has at least tried to do so, and always outside the realm of human stage performances, be it a theater, a political gathering or a religious ceremony. When Christ found himself in trouble, he went to meditate completely alone on a meadow or a hill, in silent spaces. And again, something important, though inscrutable, was brought back from the meadow or the mountain onto the human stage. Every single religious movement in the history of man has tried to bring the message of the emotional depth from the meadow onto the stage inside, in vain. Tolerance, goodness, patience, brotherhood, love, and peace are, as elements of this mood under glittering stars, contained in every religious creed, but the moment they were brought to the inside of the theater and onto the stage, they became a farce and a sham. Why? Astronomy has always been in close touch with this same mood. Kepler brought the idea of a living force, the vis animalis, that governs the heavens as it governs the living organism right onto the stage. It did not survive. The constellations of the stars in the heavens in ancient times were represented, most fancifully, by different living creatures: the scorpion and the bear, Andromeda and Hercules and Pisces, etc. Thus, man knew that somehow he came from the heavens, into which, in nearly every religion, he believed he would return after death on earth. For ages, man has projected his own image onto the heavens in the shape of different gods in human form, again showing that he believed himself to be somehow rooted in the heavens. In the belief of the return of the soul, of reincarnation, and the believers have not been simple fools, as the dried-up creatures on the political stage want us to believe. Man has somehow searched for a reality in which to root himself in the vastnesses of the universe. So far, in vain. In recent times, more and more human thinking has come to assume that the idea of a universal natural law and the idea of God are pointing to one and the same reality. Abstract mathematics, from the Pythagoreans to the modern relativists, has somehow assumed that the human power of reasoning is closely related to cosmic functions. True, no concrete links between reason and universe became evident. Still, the close connection was taken for granted. Mere reasoning seemed to have corroborated such a close interrelation between mind and universe. However, it is not readily comprehensible what these links are. Argonomy has contributed some major insights into this riddle by disclosing the transitions from reasoning to emotions, from emotions to instincts, from instincts to bioenergetic functions, and from bioenergetic functions to physical argon energy functions. Thus, the impelling force to search and the religious belief meet somewhere in the vast spaces. But both reasoning and belief instantly distort the clarity of the meadow experience when they transfer it onto the human stage. Why? Is it because man is a different being on the meadow from what he is on the stage? Probably, but the answer is not good enough. Now, the boundaries separating religious belief and pure reasoning have been crossed, or rather wiped away by Argon research. It was shown in Ether, God, and Devil that both reason and belief are rooted in the argonautic, bioenergetic functioning of man. They are both rooted in one and the same functional realm. Thus, it appears that all the events on the stage are somehow rooted in events on the meadow. but the common route is obfuscated by definite changes that occur during the passage through the door leading from the vastnesses of nature to the narrowness of the stage. Outside, everything seems to be one. Inside, the stage proper is cleanly separated from the auditorium. Outside, you can appear as you are. Inside, you have to disguise your true appearance by a false beard, or a false pose or a make-believe expression. Outside, two children in deep embrace would not astonish or shock anyone. Inside, it would immediately invoke police action. Outside, a child is a child, an infant is an infant, and a mother is a mother, no matter whether in the form of a deer, or a bear, or a human being. Inside, an infant is not an infant if its mother cannot show a marriage certificate. Outside, to know the stars is to know God, and to meditate about God is to meditate about the heavens. Inside, somehow, if you believe in God, you do not understand or you refuse to understand the stars. Outside, if you search in the heavens, you refuse, and rightly so, to believe in the sinfulness of the natural embrace. Outside, you feel your blood surging and you do not doubt that something is moving in you, a thing you call your emotion, with its location undoubtedly in the middle of your body and close to your heart. Inside, you do not live with your total organism, but only with your brain, and not only is it forbidden to study emotions, more, you are accused of being an adherent of phrenology and mysticism if you experience emotions in the same way inside as you do outside. Outside, there is such a thing as the movement and quivering of everything, from the atmosphere to your nerves. Inside, there is only empty space and atoms dissolved into an endless row of particles. Let us stop now. It is enough to have shown the great discrepancy. We are now moving into the open spaces to find, if possible, what the newborn infant brings with it onto the human stage. This study will, among other things, deal with hurricanes, the shape of the galaxies, and the ring of the aurora borealis. This will astonish many a reader. What, he will inevitably ask, has a well-known, distinguished psychiatrist to do with hurricanes, galaxies, and the aurora borealis? Is not this proof enough of the rumor that he went off the beam some years ago, after having reached a high degree of distinction in the field of psychiatry? It is not the writer who went off the beam, but the reader who thinks that way. He has forgotten his origin and refuses to be disturbed in the enjoyment of the stage show make-believe. He has refused to leave the theater and to follow us through the door onto the vast meadow whence all being stems. He has not realized that a newborn infant cannot possibly be understood from the viewpoint of a culture into which it is being born. This is its future. It can only be understood from where it came, i.e., from outside the stage. Hurricanes, galaxies, and the aurora borealis come into the view of a human being who deals with the mentally sick and with newborn infants if he follows consistently the red thread of inquiry and reasoning that leads outward from unhampered observation of man's behavior toward his origin in the cosmic realm of functioning. Those who wish to stay inside and refuse to move out are, of course, entitled to do so. But they are not entitled to pass judgment on the experience of others who do not believe in the rationality of the stage show, who refuse to accept the dogma that what man displays inside the narrow space on the stage is his true being and his true nature. Those who remain sitting in the tight little place have no right whatsoever to judge what the wanderer on the outside experiences, sees, smells, lives through. No dweller on 32nd Street who never left New York would dare pass judgment on a report from an explorer of the North Pole. Yet, without ever having cared even to peep outside through the keyhole of the door, he usurps the right to pass judgment on the experiences of Argonomy, which operates far outside his narrow, tight, little stage. Let him be modest and confine himself to his own little world. We do not permit him to have opinions, and with a show of authority to boot, about things he never dreamed of approaching. He may be an authority on the stage of the theater, or a well-trained critic of the play, or he may be an actor playing the role of a professor of biology or astronomy. But in all these cases he is within the theater building. And unless he actually steps outside onto the meadow and looks around himself, seeing what is to be seen there in the open spaces, he had better be quiet and remain sitting comfortably where he is. Nobody will blame him. Outside, however, he is no authority whatsoever. There are no false beards outside, only living beings searching and wondering about where they came from and why they are there. We shall be glad to take his hand and lead him out into the night, where we have learned first to see and to feel what we intend to measure. We shall be happy to do so. But first let him remove his false beard of dignity. Let him be a man first. Finally, it should be clearly stated that the seeming immodesty of the scope of this investigation is a quality of the function cosmic superimposition and not of the investigator. We are dealing with cosmic dimensions to be measured in light years, not in seconds. Chapter 2 Survey on Man's Roots in Nature 1 The serious student of Argonomy is now invited to enter an airplane and fly high over the territory that has been made accessible through the discovery of the cosmic argon energy. We are leaving behind us the mechanisms of distorted human nature, the biopathies and the neuroses, the miseries of infancy and the agonies of adolescence, the political irrationalism, as well as the production of goods. We shall survey the land where no human foot has ever trod, where no security but only functioning exists. The survey should serve one purpose only, to prepare for future possible settlements in a new, unknown territory. We shall survey our future home of astrophysical knowledge. The existence of the new territory now to be surveyed became known not through the study of matter or mechanical movements but of man's basic emotions. To the mechanistically or chemically oriented mind this sounds rather queer. What, it asks, has the ecliptic, the yearly path of the sun, the aurora borealis, or a hurricane to do with human emotions? Mystical distortion of true knowledge is suspected. To this, in preparation for our flight, we answer, it is always a sign of ignorance or of a mystical orientation to put man and his emotions outside the pale of physical nature. Man is a part of nature, he grew out of natural functions. It cannot possibly be otherwise. It follows from mere reasoning about natural evolution. There is no valid counterargument to this statement. Man, including his emotions, evolved from nature as one of its developmental products. Once this conclusion is accepted, the next question follows, in what manner is man rooted in nature? The chemophysical base of operation, also, views man as being rooted in nature. There, it is the chemical elements and the electrons that connect man with nature. All medicine and all education of the last century were based on the chemophysical rooting of man in nature. However, the mechanistic materialistic viewpoint was incapable of including human emotional life, thus, mystical and spiritual dogmata filled the gaps. Here, as is well known, the spirit, the soul, the something within man that feels and cries and laughs and loves and hates appeared to be connected with an immaterial world spirit. It represented in more or less clear terms man's connection with the creator of the universe, with God. Thus, mechanics and spiritualism supplemented each other, with no bridge between the two realms. We had, accordingly, a science of physical nature and a science of moral conduct, or ethics. Education, medicine, government, etc., were all geared to this dichotomy in man's existence. In education there were the good, God-fearing, and the bad, devil-inspired, children. In medicine one injected calcium, vitamins, sulfa drugs, or one applied the knife to the frontal lobe in cases of emotional disorders. In government this view has led to the establishment of God-sent, absolute monarchs, or Führers who wield full mechanical as well as spiritual power over men. In natural science the dichotomy prevailed in the form of atoms here and complete ignorance of and disregard for the emotions there. The result of it all was an empty space at rest and cosmic equations that cleanly resolved to zero. The Newtonian and the Goethean view of nature remained irreconcilable. The best among the physicists of the 20th century have given up hope regarding their own structure of thought. They, too, are looking for the new land. Lecomte du Noy writes, physicists of the 19th century had drawn a picture of the universe that was as satisfactory and reassuring as today's picture is unsatisfactory. there is the same difference between our science and that of our grandparents as there is between a cubist or surrealist painting and a Mysonier or a Whistler. The small indivisible balls, which we fondly dreamed represented atoms, gave way at first to minute solar systems in which the electrons were the planets. To explain the discontinuity of energy, it then became necessary to allow the electrons to jump from one orbit to another. At that time they were considered as particles of matter but with a mass dependent on their velocity, which was most disturbing. When moving to an outside orbit a quantum of energy was absorbed, when passing from the outside to inner orbits a quantum was emitted. It was admitted that 8 electrons could occupy an orbit. The central nucleus, the Sun 1840 times heavier than the electron, carried a positive charge that maintained the electrons, negative electric particles, on their orbits. This model was certainly not ideal and raised many difficulties of detail. For example, the rotation of an electron on an orbit was supposed to entail neither absorption nor emission of energy, which is not very clear. But it had become familiar, and in spite of its complexity we considered it as a friend. We had begun to forget its imperfections. It was, after all, conceivable, and there was something reassuring in the fact that there existed only one ultimate element that was the same for matter and electricity. We had no sooner become accustomed to it, I might almost say attached to it, than we learned rather brutally that this atom was only an impostor and that the real atom had never resembled such a monster. We were told that there were not only 2 elements, the electron and the proton, but at least 3, one positive and one, the neutron, which carries no charge, the mesons, positive and negative, the photon, quantum of light, which like the particles is constituted of energy, and 2 entities whose reality is limited to the necessity for balancing equations, the neutrino and antineutrino, actually bookkeeping particles. Furthermore, only one electron can occupy an orbit, and today we can hardly even speak of an orbit. We cannot even talk about an electron, in the sense that we did a few years ago, for the electron is at the same time a particle perhaps deprived of mass and a wave. Strictly speaking, it is not even a particle, it is only the expression of the probability that the properties that we attribute to the electron are to be found in a certain point of space. To be clearer, we can say that the electron is a wave of probability. The current notions of time and space no longer apply to these entities, which evolve in a pluridimensional space. Italics are mine. W.R. The Road to Reason, by Lecomte du Noy. What has Argonomy to offer here? Does it collect the remaining fragments of a shattered old world picture that went to pieces, or does it start anew? It starts from scratch, in a basic, fundamentally independent fashion, without borrowing theories from classical science. Not because it wants to, but because it has to. Its point of departure is not the electron nor the atom, it is not a linear motion in empty space, nor is it a world spirit or an eternal value. Its point of departure is the observable and measurable functions in the cosmic Argon ocean, from which all being, physical as well as emotional, emerges. Man, from this viewpoint, is, together with all other living beings, a bit of specially organized cosmic Argon energy. Obviously, what constitutes man's roots in nature is not what distinguishes him from nature at large. Thus, man is not rooted in nature by his ability to talk, think, walk, eat, nor by the chemophysical components of his physical structure such as salts, water, sugar, carbohydrates, etc. It is surely not his social organization or civilization that connects him with nature. These functions are variations apart from basic nature. Nature does not walk or think, talk or eat, nor is it composed of proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. The common functioning principle that unites man with nature is something entirely different from all these things, something totally unknown. Socio-economic philosophy has dealt with only one of the many deviations of man from nature, the economy of goods produced by tools used by man. The tool is a specifically human creation. Argonomy, on the other hand, roots man in nature in the common functioning principle, CFP, i.e., in functions man has in common with basic natural functions. Since the CFP is always broader than later variations, the ergonomic viewpoint is much broader as well as infinitely deeper than the economic point of viewpoint to nature, before life emerges from it as a special variation, has no economy, does not propagate, divide, walk, talk, eat, or perceive. Which functions, then, govern basically both non-living and living nature? Where is the red thread that runs through all of it, from the primordial Argon unit, visible in the darkroom, to the highest manifestations of life in man? A bold and terrifying question this is, indeed. However, we must not shrink from it. On the perfect formulation of this question much of future functional natural research depends. When the going in unknown territory becomes rough, when the view blurs and confusion impends, it is necessary to return to realms of well-established knowledge. The red thread that hitherto guided our total research was found in the orgasm function. It was discovered that the orgastic convulsion governs all of the animal kingdom at the very roots of its bioenergetic existence. It was, furthermore, ascertained that the 4B tension rightward arrow charge rightward arrow discharge rightward arrow relaxation also governs cell division. Expansion and contraction, the two basic paired functions of the orgasm, also dominate the development of the embryo. In addition, this same function is clearly visible in the behavior of protozoa such as vorticelli, etc. Does the orgasm function, as formulated here ergonometrically, also permeate non-living nature? Ergonomy answers this question in the negative. It assumes that the orgasm function in the formulation given above governs only the entire living realm and that non-living nature does not show the sequence, expansion rightward arrow contraction. Is not the earthquake or the thunderstorm an event similar to the orgasm in the animal world? We must not yield to such appealing analogies. It is true that in a thunderstorm and in an earthquake a tension builds up and is released by a discharge of energy. The analogy goes far indeed, and many a poetic mind has delved extensively into it. However, careful scrutiny of the analogy between the animal orgasm and cell division on the one hand, and a thunderstorm or an earthquake on the other hand refutes a functional identity. The question is, does a thundercloud constitute an argonotic system? Obviously, it does not. It possesses no core, no peripheral membrane, and no energy field. It is not organized like a living system. Therefore it does not convulse, it only discharges accumulated charges. It is more difficult to refute a functional identity between the orgastic discharge in a living organism, including cell division, and an earthquake. We are dealing with an argonotic system in both cases, for the Earth's globe also possesses a core of energy, a membrane, the Earth's crust, and an argon energy field, the argon envelope. But does the planet convulse like a living organism? We must not mistake a dislocation of parts of a system for convulsion. The convulsion in a living organism is a total event that not only does not threaten the integrity of the system, it enhances its well-being and constitutes, as an integral physiological part of the whole, a basic function of the energy metabolism. No such function is discernible in the earthquake. It is more akin to the explosion of an overheated boiler than to an orgastic discharge. The analogy does not work. Thus, we must conclude that the orgastic convulsion is specific for the living domain only, that it differentiates the living from the non-living. Where, then, is the functional identity between the non-living and the living to be sought? In the chapter on the expressive language of the living, character analysis, 3rd ed., it has been suggested that man's orgastic longing is somehow pointing toward cosmic functions. No answer was given or attempted there. However, it was pointed out and emphasized that the orgastic longing of man, including all its disguised expressions such as mystical ecstasy, cosmic longing in puberty, etc., seems directed toward a basic function that precedes and induces the orgastic discharge, superimposition. Fig. 1. Superimposition and fusion of two living argonotic systems. The longing for the genital embrace is profoundly expressed in the belief in a universal spirit, in God, the Creator. In basic natural science it is revealed in the search for the natural law. The function of sexual fusion is taken too much for granted to arouse curiosity about its place in the general course of natural events. Yet, to the searching mind it poses a stunning riddle: whence stems the overpowering drive towards superimposition of male and female argonatic systems? This question, far from being futile, turns out to be the key to a number of major riddles in astrophysics. However, since man has banned the subject of the superimposition of two organisms from his scientific thinking in all his universities of higher learning, he has missed the approach to a great number of basic astrophysical functions and has become ensnared in an insoluble, rigid antithesis between sex and morals, nature and culture, bad and good, devil and God. In character analysis and in ether, God and devil, it was shown how man runs away from his deepest core of bioenergetic existence and how strongly he protects himself against perception of this core. Man's biophysical armoring provides the explanation for the fact of the great runaway as well as the reason for the evasion of the basic questions of his whole life: his religion, his natural philosophy and, last but not least, his quest for knowledge about nature. Man must not perceive or understand his own living core, he must keep it secluded and inaccessible if he wishes to maintain his present social organization. The great misery in which he finds himself entangled is due to his armoring, which cuts him off from his great bioenergetic possibilities and potentialities. After thus having established the how of the great runaway, we encounter the next question: why did he start running away in the first place? Chapter 3: The function of superimposition. The sexual embrace, if abstracted and reduced to its basic form, represents superimposition and the bioenergetic fusion of two argonatic systems. Its basic form is the following: Fig. 2. We have learned to reduce form to movement. Form, in argonomic functional thinking, is frozen movement. Ample evidence has indicated that superimposition is due to bioenergetic forces functioning beyond voluntary control. The two argonatic systems involved are driven to superimpose by a force that, under natural conditions, i.e., not restricted by outer or inner hindrances, is beyond their control. It is involuntary bioenergetic action. Basically, this function cannot be stopped, just as the heartbeat or intestinal peristalsis cannot be stopped, except by forceful interference or by death. When two children of different sexes, 3 to 5 years old, superimpose one and their organisms fuse argonautically, we are not dealing with propagation, since no new individual will result from this fusion. Neither are we dealing with the quest for pleasure in the psychological sense. The pleasure involved in superimposition is the experiential result, and not the driving force of the act. Let us forget for a moment all the complicated higher functions that later are added to natural superimposition. Let us reduce it all to functioning beyond the individual and even the realm of the species. Let us penetrate deeply enough to see this function as an energy process that runs a certain course quite autonomically and with unequivocal effect. If we do this, then we clearly see in it a trans-individual event, something that takes charge of life and governs it. Further careful observation tells us that bioenergetic superimposition is closely linked with plasmatic excitation and sensations of current in two argonatic systems, be they children, adolescents, or grown-ups. It is absolutely necessary, in order to visualize this function in its proper aspects, to abandon all the many social, cultural, economic, psychological, and other implications that, in the case of man, have complicated and all but obliterated its original, bioenergetic functioning. Reduced and abstracted in its purest form, superimposition in the biological realm appears as the approach through attraction and full bioenergetic contact of two argonatic streams. Membranes, organs, fluids, nerves, willpower, unconscious dynamics, etc., must be discounted here, since they do not constitute superimposition. Superimposition of two argon streams appears as a common functioning principle, CFP, of nature that fuses two living organisms in a specific manner specific to the basic natural function, and not to the two organisms. In other words, superimposition of two argon energy streams reaches, as a function, far beyond biology. It governs other realms of nature, too, as it governs living systems. In order to find out which realms of nature beyond the living realm are governed by superimposition of two Argon energy streams, we must not deviate from its basic form and movement. Argonometrically abstracted, it is this, Fig. 3. Basic form of the function superimposition. Its functional characteristics are: 1. Two directions of energy flow. 2. Convergence, attraction, and mutual approach of the two energy streams. 3. Superimposition and contact. 4. Merger. 5. Sharp curving of path of flow. Finding superimposition in realms of non-living nature would be a first decisive step toward finding a cardinal root of man in nature, a common functioning principle that, already present and working in nature at large, also permeates in a basic fashion the animal kingdom, including man. The following is a sweeping generalization. It was pointed out at the very beginning that what we are doing here is no more than flying high above a vast territory, the exploration of which will require painstaking, detailed efforts. We are free later on to abandon parts of it or the whole aspect, should it resist strictest observational and experimental as well as argonometric scrutiny. We are also free to construct the framework of a future detailed operation, to retain its general features, its layout, and its basic characteristics while changing most of its inner detailed constitution. We are free to leave the confirmation or refutation of this construction to others. However, we would have to remind anyone who would approach a task of such magnitude to be well aware of the broad factual background from which the framework of this workshop construction emerged. To those who never dare to look into microscopes or at the sky, who never sit in an argon energy accumulator and yet are full of fake authoritative opinions about argonomy, we say in advance, step aside and do not disturb most serious work. Keep quiet, at least. Years of painstaking observations and functional theory formation have hewn two major pathways into the realm of non-living nature that revealed the function of superimposition to be at work at the very roots of the universe. One pathway leads into the microcosmos, the other into the macrocosmos. Superimposition is the CFP that integrates both into one natural function. Let us begin with the microcosmic realm. We shall not dwell too long in it since, though the theoretical outlines seem clearly marked, there are many gaps in details essential to a firm foothold. The essence of the microcosmic framework is as follows: in completely darkened, metal-lined argon energy observation rooms we can observe illuminating argon energy units pursuing certain pathways as they move spinning forward through space. These pathways distinctly show the form of a spinning wave. Fig. 4. This was reported on several occasions many years ago without further elaboration. There is now ample, well-reasoned evidence to the effect that two such spiraling and excited argon energy units attract and approach each other until they superimpose. Thus, Fig. 5. It is an essential characteristic of our base of operation to assume that the primordial argon energy ocean is entirely mass-free. Accordingly, mass, inert mass at first, emerges from this mass-free energy substratum. It seems logical further to assume that in the process of superimposition of two mass-free, spiraling, and highly excited argon energy units, kinetic energy is being lost, the rate of spiraling motion decreases greatly, the path of motion is sharply curved, and a change takes place from long drawn-out spinning forward towards circular motion on the spot. Exactly at this point of the process, inert mass emerges from the slowed-down motion of two or more superimposed argon energy units. It is immaterial whether we call this first bit of inert mass atom or electron or something else. The basic point is the emergence of inert mass from frozen kinetic energy. This assumption is in full agreement with well-known laws of classical physics. It is also in agreement, as will be shown in a different context, with the quantum theory. To continue our train of thought, we must further assume that the material, chemical particles that compose the atmosphere have originally emerged and are still continuously emerging through superimposition of two or more spinning argon energy units in the argon envelope of the planet. It matters little at this point in what particular manner the different material units are created from primordial argon energy. We restrict our curiosity to the above-mentioned basic change: inert mass is being created by superimposition of two or more spinning, spiraling argon energy units through loss of kinetic energy and sharp bending of the elongated path towards circular motion. Fig. 6. Creation of the primordial mass particle, M, through argonautic superimposition. A functional relationship is hereby established between the spinning movement of mass-free argon energy, or, and inert mass, M, which also characterizes the relationship of heavenly bodies spinning in the surrounding argon ocean. Spheres or disks of solid matter spin on a spiraling path within a faster-moving, wavy argon energy ocean, as balls roll forward on a faster-moving, progressing water wave. The exact numerical relationship of the two movements, though of great importance, does not matter at this point. What is important is that a functional relationship has been found between the movements of primordial argon energy and matter that, for the first time in the history of astrophysics, makes comprehensible the fact that heavenly bodies move in a spinning manner. Furthermore, it makes comprehensible the fact that our Sun and our planets move in the same plane and in the same direction, held together in space as a cohesive group of spinning bodies. The spinning wave is the integration of the circular and forward motion of the planets, of their simultaneous rotation on the NS axis and their movement forward in space. The Argon Ocean appears as the primordial mover of the heavenly bodies. Sharply delineated, new astrophysical problems arise that cannot and should not be discussed at this time. It is sufficient to have them tentatively formulated. 1. It is necessary to assume that the first material particles that were created by superimposition of two or more argon energy units form the nucleus for the growth of the material body. It does not matter at present whether these core elements of the future heavenly body are of a gaseous or of a solid nature, or whether they possibly go through a process of development from a gaseous to a solid state. What matters is that a starting point for the development of a heavenly body from primordial energy has been hypothetically established. Cf. Bibliography, No. 31. 2. A further logical necessity is the assumption of a genesis of the function of gravitational attraction. The growth of the material core particle of the future heavenly body would be accomplished on the basis of the argonomic potential. The argonautically stronger body attracts smaller and weaker systems, such as mass-free argon energy units, and other small bits of primordial matter as they arise in the argon ocean, which surrounds the first growing core. It would be necessary, furthermore, to distinguish between the argonautic attraction of two energy waves and the gravitational attraction between two material bodies, i.e., to establish that primordial argonautic attraction changes functionally into gravitational mass attraction. 3. From points 1 and 2, we would further have to assume that the growing material core would be permanently surrounded by an argon energy field which from now on would be subject to the gravitational attraction of that core. This would explain the origin of the argon envelope of the Sun, corona, and of the Earth. Both are clearly visible and are governed by basic argonomic functions such as wavy motion from west to east, faster motion of the envelope than the globe, lumination, blue color, and containment within the field of attraction of the material core. 4. The mass-free argon energy stream that surrounds the material globe, must, due to the argonautic attraction exerted upon it by the core, separate from the general stream of the cosmic argon energy ocean and follow the rotation on its axis of the material body. Thus, the cosmic ocean, hitherto unitary, splits up into one major and one minor argon energy stream. This assumption will be verified by concrete astrophysical functions, cf. Figure 7. Fig. 7.5. The gaseous atmosphere that surrounds the heavenly bodies would necessarily have to emerge through superimposition of mass-free argon energy units in the revolving argon energy envelope. This necessary assumption would have to be confirmed in due time by the establishment of the laws that lead from the mass-free argon energy units to the atomic weights of the gas particles that constitute the gaseous atmosphere. 6. It follows that concentration and condensation would increase toward the core of the rotating body, the heavier elements being located near the center and the lighter elements progressively nearer the periphery, with the lightest gases helium, hydrogen, argon, neon, etc. being located at the extreme periphery. 7. In this connection, a most striking functional identity must be mentioned, which so far has not attracted attention in scientific thinking. The chemical elements that constitute the gaseous atmosphere of the planets are identical to the elements that constitute the living argonatic systems. They are hydrogen, H, oxygen, O, nitrogen, N, and carbon, C, and their various molecular groupings such as CO2, H2O, C6H12O6, etc. This functional identity must have a deep significance. The functional identity concerns only the primordial argon energy functions and the transformations from primordial mass-free to secondary mass-containing functions. From there on, but not previously, the well-known laws of mechanics and chemistry are fully valid. They submit to evolution, they have a genesis. The problem to be solved in detail is how the mechanical and chemical laws originated from the functional processes in the mass-free primordial argon energy ocean. The advantage of our work hypothesis, as delineated above, is quite obvious. To summarize, 1. It frees us from the clumsy assumption of material bodies rolling in an empty space, in a merely mathematically approachable action at a distance in a field. The field is real, of a measurable, observable, and thus physical nature. Space is not empty but is filled in a continuous manner without gaps. 2. It frees us, furthermore, from the uncomfortable idea that a gravitational attraction, which never could be demonstrated, is exerted by the Sun over tremendous distances upon all the planets. The Sun and the planets move in the same plane and revolve in the same direction due to the movement and direction of the cosmic argon energy stream in the galaxy. Thus, the Sun does not attract anything at all. It is merely the biggest brother of the whole group. We have done no more than draw a sketch of the transition from the microcosmic to the macrocosmic function. We shall later return to superimposition in the macrocosmic realm in greater detail. But first we must acquaint ourselves with some important functions pertaining to the function of superimposition in the living realm, where it was originally discovered. We shall concentrate upon 2 basic functions only, 1. The spinning flow of argon energy in the living organism, bioenergy. 2. The superimposition of 2 argon energy streams in living bodies, copulation, and the functional meaning of the drive to genital embrace and orgastic discharge. Chapter 4. The living argonome. The formation of living matter in Argon Experiment XX1 combines numerous bioenergetic and biofunctional phenomena into a single result of great significance. This experiment reproduces the process of primary biogenesis, i.e., the original formation of plasmatic, living matter through condensation of mass-free cosmic argon energy. This conclusion derives logically from the fact that organic forms with all the properties of living matter, structure, pulsation, reproduction, growth, and development, can be developed by a freezing process in a clear solution of high argonatic potency. The subject is inexhaustible, but it is not our objective to treat it exhaustively. Once more, I would recall the discovery of the American continent by Columbus. This discovery did not exhaust all past and future possibilities of America. It did open the door to an enormous territory full of future potentialities. The same holds true for Experiment XX. The schema below represents approaches to the manifold functions of nature that were opened up by Experiment XX. 1. The development of organic forms, plasmatic argonomes, bions. 2. The organization of protozoa, argonomia. 3. The formation of biochemical matter, coal, sugar, fat. 4. The furtherance of life and growth as affected by the argon water solution. In the process of the freezing experiment, energy is transformed into matter. This matter is alive. By means of dehydration or burning of the flakes, carbon and a sweet-tasting, sugary substance originate from it. These are gross characteristics to be elaborated in detail. In this process, frozen argon energy passes through all phases of bionous formation revealed by argon biophysics. T forms develop into Pa bions through the intake of mass-free argon energy. The Pa bions grow into larger, rounded shapes resembling small eggs. Some of these egg shapes expand and become bean-shaped. The bean shapes acquire motility and form protozoa, argonomia. In movement and shape, they look very much like spermatozoa. we may assume that the spermatozoa and eggs in the metazoa are also formed through condensation of argon energy in the germinal tissues. The development of formed bions from distilled argon water establishes beyond any doubt the process of primary formation of organic matter from mass-free argon. Bion water is yellow, ranging in intensity to almost a brown. In this context, one is reminded of the yellow resin produced by trees, of yellow honey produced by bees, of the yellow color of animal blood serum, the yellow of urine, etc. Also of great significance is the blood sugar level in the organism. Thus the gap in biology, which up to now contained a mystery, namely, how plants convert solar energy into carbohydrates and solid cellulose forms, is apparently closed. Solar energy is our argon energy that the plants absorb directly from the soil, the atmosphere, and the rays of the sun. The leaves of evergreen ivy are a case in point. In winter, the leaves lose their green color, except for the venation, which remains green. The rest turns a yellow-brown. In spring, the green expands from the leaf vessels across the smooth leaf. This phenomenon permits the assumption that, in winter, argon energy retreats from the periphery of the leaves, in other words, it contracts because of the cold, to expand again in spring. That portion of the ivy leaves about to die off is thus revived. The change from green to yellow in autumn and from yellow to green in spring becomes perfectly comprehensible in terms of argonatic functioning. According to classical investigations, green is the result of a mixture of yellow and blue. Blue is the specific color of argon energy, visible in the atmosphere, ocean, thunderclouds, red blood cells, protozoa, etc., and on orthochromatic photographic plates after irradiation with earth bions. Now it seems clear that the yellowing of the leaves in autumn is due to disappearance of the blue from the green, and accordingly, the turning toward green again in evergreen ivy is due to new absorption of argon energy from the atmosphere. Thus, the green of leaves is the result of the mixture of yellow resin and blue atmospheric argon energy. At present, we would like to limit our investigation to a single function, the origin of formed living matter from mass-free argon energy. Right now we are not interested in the chemical composition of these forms. There is only one assumption that satisfactorily explains the origin of modal, formed living substance in experiment XX. In the process of freezing, the mass-free argon energy in the fluid contracts, just like living plasma. Hence, this contraction does not depend on the existence of formed matter. It exists prior to the formation of matter, as a basic function of cosmic argon. The contraction of argon energy is accompanied by condensation, and condensation is accompanied by the formation of material particles of microscopically small dimension. The classical, mechanistic concept does not provide for any causal connection between energy movement and organismic form. Argon biophysics can prove a functional connection between form of movement and form of living matter. Primary matter originated in the cosmos, and the process of matter formation apparently continues uninterruptedly. The cosmic origin of bioenergy is experienced as an equation of life-Earth-Sun-Spring. The mechanistic concept knows only atoms and molecules that combine to form salts and organic bodies. It can explain neither movement nor formation of living matter because neither the first nor the second resemble mechanical movements and known geometric forms in any way. In contrast, argon biophysics operates with a concrete cosmic energy. It postulates that the functions of cosmic energy in the realm of inorganic matter are in harmony with those in the realm of living matter. In experiment XX, membranes and then bions are formed from mass-free argon energy. They constitute forms that cannot yet be described as living organisms in the accepted biological sense, but they already show the typical shape of living organisms. This is clearly apparent in the illustrations of experiment XX, cf. Figure 19. The forms of most flakes resemble those of fish or tadpoles. Now, if forms invariably express frozen movement, we may reason, a posteriori, from these forms to the functions of argon energy. Exact observation and extensive comparison will show that there exists a basic form of living matter that has no counterpart in classic geometry. Viewed laterally, This basic form looks as follows. Fig 8 viewed from above or below, the living form is typically as follows. Fig 9. Before investigating the bioenergetic function of this form, let us make sure that it is indeed the biophysical basic form. It clearly applies to 1. Plant seeds, wheat, corn, barley, oats, beans, lentils. 2. Plant bulbs, potato tubers, almond kernels, the pits of apples, pears, plums, peaches. 3. Animal sperm cells. 4. Animal eggs, particularly birds' eggs. 5. Animal embryos. 6. All organs of the animal body, heart, bladder, liver, kidney, spleen, lung, brain, testicle, ovary, uterus, stomach. 7. Unicellular organisms, paramecia, colpodia, vorticelli, cancer cells, human vaginal protozoa, trichomonas vaginalis, etc. 8. Whole animal and plant bodies, jellyfish, starfish, reptiles of all kinds, the trunk formation of all kinds of birds, fish, beetles, mammals, including man, etc. 9. Trees in general, as well as each single leaf and blossom, pollen and pistils of plants. It is noteworthy that even those organs extending from the trunk, arms, legs, fins, wings, the head of the snake, the lizard, the fox, man himself, the fish, etc. in turn take the form of the argonome. Even the claws and beaks of birds, the air bladder of fish, the horns of cattle, rams and stags, the shells of snails and mussels take the form of the argonome. All this points to the work of a natural law of energy, a law that fundamentally differs from the geometric laws of classic mechanistics. Access to this law of cosmic energy must be sought in the movement of mass-free argon energy. Just as the expressive movements of living matter are inextricably tied to an emotional expression that is meaningful in relation to the world around it, so the form of living matter has a specific expression too. The point is to read it correctly. All forms in the realm of living matter can easily be reduced to the egg form without violating the individual variations of form. This basic form varies with length, width, and thickness. It may appear in subdivisions of the same form, as in worms, but whether as a whole or in part, the basic form of living matter always remains the same egg form. Such a consistent uniformity of the organic form must correspond to a fundamental law of nature and a natural law of cosmic dimensions. For the basic biological form is universal, regardless of climate or geology. It is as if cosmic argon energy, in organizing living substance, obeyed only one law, its own law of motion. We shall call the specific basic form of living matter the argonome. Its typical basic form is the following generalization of microscopic forms from experiment XX, Fig 10. Closed argonome, basic form trigonometry of the argonome we would like to designate as an argonome that specific form which, in its purest shape, is represented by the hen egg. The argonome is neither a triangle nor a square nor a circle, it is neither an ellipse nor a parabola nor a hyperbola. The argonome represents a special, novel geometric figure, a closed plane curve, not unlike the ellipse with half-axes of varying length and width, but differing from the ellipse precisely because of the different length of the large axes. Let us try to determine how an argonome originates, argonometrically speaking. Two fundamental natural phenomena are involved, 1. The orgastic convulsion. 2. The spinning wave chrysler well, KRW. We encounter the orgastic convulsion in the entire animal kingdom. We discern the spinning wave, KRW, by observing atmospheric argon in the darkroom. The tiny, blue-violet points glide along specific trajectories, which I described schematically in the second volume of the Discovery of the Argon as follows. Fig 11. Let us isolate an individual wave from the KRW path. Fig 12. If we place two such spinning waves together with their concave sides, we obtain the known form of the ellipse. Fig 13. However, if we bend a KRW in the center at point A and bring the two ends of the KRW B and B together, we obtain the egg, or argonome form. Fig 14 and 15. We could work out this process in terms of pure trigonometry without providing Argon physical proof. But the orgastic convulsion gives us a biophysical argument that endows this trigonometric process with great importance. The most conspicuous phenomenon in the orgasm reflex is the striving of both ends of the torso, the mouth and the genitals, to come closer together. This biophysical phenomenon indeed put me on the trail leading to the origin of the argonome form. In the orgastic convulsion of an animal, or in the swimming motion of the jellyfish, the body seems to sag in the center, bringing both ends closer together. The connection of a fundamental biological movement with a physical movement may, at first glance, seem arbitrary. But such a connection is justified if it opens the door to an obvious lawfulness in biological functioning. To my knowledge, the basic form of living bodies has never been understood. And if the orgasm reflex promises us an understanding of the argonome form, we must not reject it. The similarity of a KRW to an animal body, viewed laterally, is indeed startling, cf. Figure 14. Detailed proof of this similarity cannot be presented here but has already been established experimentally. If living matter is frozen argon energy, the form of movement of the argon energy must necessarily translate itself into the form of living matter, the argonome form. This functional continuity is hard to find in the realm of inorganic matter. It is easily understandable in the realm of living matter. If form is the movement of energy that is frozen, then the organ form must derive from the form of movement of cosmic energy. Let us return to the orgasm reflex, this rich source of bioenergetic insights. We found that the orgasm reflex cannot be verbalized in terms of idiomatic language. Its mode of expression, we concluded, was supra-individual, neither metaphysical nor mystical, but cosmic. In the orgasm reflex, the highly excited organism attempts to bring both ends of its torso closer together as if to unite them. If this interpretation is correct, it must also prove correct in other categories of argon functioning and cannot be limited to the orgasm reflex alone. Let us now look at the form of the biological argonome in its functional connection with the form of plasmatic currents. True to the principle of the functional identity of all living substance, we must gather apparently widely separated functions and look for their common denominator. Plasmatic current does not flow continuously but in rhythmic thrusts. Hence we speak of pulsation. The pulsation can be plainly observed in the blood circulation of all metazoa. The pulsatory current of body fluids is the work of the organismic argon, a direct expression of its form of movement. From the pulsation of body fluids we must reason, a posteriori, that there is a pulsation of argon energy. This conclusion is confirmed by observing certain protozoa, in which pulsatory waves of excitation pass through the body and set the protoplasm in motion. Among worms, excitation waves of a pulsatory nature pass from the tail end to the head. The same phenomenon can be seen in certain amoeboid cancer cells. The following drawing expresses the form in which excitation waves move in the protoplasm of these cancer cells, Fig 16. Hence we must distinguish between two kinds of pulsatory movements in living matter, the pulsatory movement of argon energy in the organism, and its effect, the pulsatory mechanical movement of body fluids. We differentiate here between functional bioenergetic pulsation and mechanical pulsation. The mechanical pulsation results from the functional pulsation of the argon, its spinning forward in alternating expansion and contraction. Since the movement of fluids is mechanical, it can only be the expression and consequence of the pulsatory function of argon energy. Among the flowing amoebae, the bioenergetic pulsation coincides completely with the organic flow of fluids. Among the Colpidia and Paramecia, the body is rigid and contains large, membranous fluid-filled vesicles without flowing plasm. Here the movement of energy can be discerned only in the locomotion of the whole body. If we compare the form of movement of the waves of excitation in cancer cells with the external form of movement of Trichomonas vaginalis, Colpidia, and Paramecia, we find there is a thrusting, pulsatory motion that does not proceed in a straight line but in the manner of a spiral, presenting an overall curvature. We can connect the individual points of the movement curve and find a geometric figure that depicts a spinning wave, kRW, and looks roughly as follows. Fig 17. We see that the curve of the plasma current inside the body of the cancer cell is the same as in the locomotion of the whole body of a colpidium. If we dissect the curve of the argonotic plasma current into its individual parts, we obtain a shape that, laterally viewed, resembles the form of all living organs and organisms, cf. Figure 14. This harmony, in the form of movement of the energy particles, plasma current, argonotic excitation waves and the shape of the organs, cannot be mere coincidence. It is obviously governed by a common law of movement revealed time and again in the individual forms of motions and structures. Even the elongated earthworm, which, at first glance, reveals nothing that resembles an argonome form turning back on itself, shows the argonome in the segments. Furthermore, the earthworm curls up in a manner that looks like the argonome of a snail shell, cf. Figure 20:3 and 4. The following diagram illustrates the structuralized, clearly expressed original movement of the organismic argon energy in the growth of a shell, Fig 18. Thus we can distinguish three states of argonotic expressive movement: A. The spinning motion of argonotic excitation waves, of protoplasm and of the locomotion of protozoa. B. The argonome form of animal organs and organisms, i.e., frozen argon movement. C. The argonome form of the animal body at rest, as an intermediary state between energy movement and solid matter. We now have a better biophysical understanding of the segmentary arrangement of the argonotic current in man and of the segmentary arrangement, or armoring, in the biopathic character. The plasmatic, mechanical, and the argonotic, bioenergetic, currents in man blood circulation and excitation waves have the same rhythmic, wavy, and segmentary character as observed in the earthworm. The segmental arrangement of the armoring expresses the immobilization of individual parts of the wave path, or, to put it differently, one wave freezes into one formed argonome segment. Thus the principle of argon therapy to proceed always from the head to the tail, i.e., to the genitals, acquires its bioenergetic meaning. As in the earthworm, the snake, and the plasmatic cancer cell, the argonotic waves invariably pass from the tail end over the back toward the head. Bioenergetically, this arrangement of the argonotic flow makes sense, because it is predicated on the forward movement of the whole body in the direction of the head. In argon therapy, if we first loosened the armoring at the tail end, the liberated energy would be blocked at the segment located farther ahead. But the dissolving of the armor at the head end eliminates the armor rings at the place toward which the argonotic excitation must flow. We meet the direction of the current, and thus free the way for its unhindered flow, instead of starting to break the armor at the source of this current. The technique of argon therapy did not start out with these biophysical speculations in mind, but followed purely clinical considerations, example that it would be advantageous to liberate all the energy of the body before mobilizing the genitals. But, as we now see, the clinical and the bioenergetic aspects of the matter combine in a common useful function. Fig 19. Various typical forms of plasmatic flakes in experiment XX, drawn from nature, bioenergetic argonome 1. 2 extended, open argonomes, placed together, show the heart form, also the form of tree and plant leaves, various fruits, plums, etc., eggs 2. Human earlobe, shells of oysters, clams 3. Curled up worms, snakes 4. Shell of the snail 5. Intestines, worms, caterpillars 6. Embryo, stomach, brain, spleen, kidney, liver, pancreas. Fig 20. Various argonome forms, abstracted. Let us now return to our experiment XX in order to learn more about the formation of living substance into the argonome. We find plasmatic flakes in which first circular, then bean-shaped argonome forms can be seen. In the bean shape, the argonome is once more clearly evident. This argonome is in motion. Its movements again have argonome form, as can easily be discerned in the spiral lines of their progressive movement. We may now appropriately conclude that through the freezing process the freely moving argon energy in the fluid is, in very small part, converted into matter by membrane formation. Since the movement of argon energy is curved, it stands to reason that the membranes are also curved. Inside the membranes, mass-free argon energy continues to move. Naturally enough, it strives to expand the membrane, as if it meant to burst through the sac in which it is trapped. There is of course no reasoning involved here, but rather a contradiction between the function of the expanding movement of the mass-free argon and the confining membrane. Logical deduction demonstrates that nothing but a bean shape, our argonome, can result from this contradiction between energy flow and restricting membrane. Of course, the formation of the bean shape does not in any way satisfy the modal impulse of mass-free argon energy inside, an impulse directed toward stretching the curve, i.e., toward moving away from the spot. Therefore, the local forward movement, whose basic tendency consists again in stretching, curving, and rhythmically reverting upon itself, appears for the first time. The development